You are looking at a wall of split wood stacked outside a farmhouse, and you think you already know what it means. You don't. That neat stack is only one of 9 fuels sitting inside an Amish woodshed before the first frost. And here is the part that will bother you. Every single one of them costs less than $10 at your local Walmart. Not a fortune, not a permit, not a special delivery, $10. I spent most of my life paying somebody else to keep my family warm. Furnace contracts, propane trucks, a gas bill that climbed every winter like it had a grudge. Then I started spending time with Amish families in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and later out in Holmes County, Ohio, and I learned that a whole community heats through a brutal winter for the price of a couple restaurant meals. The knowledge is old. It survived because they never handed their comfort over to a company. The first time I walked into one of those homes near Millersburg, I stood in the kitchen for 20 minutes just looking for the thermostat. There isn't one. And by the end of this, I am going to show you the 9th fuel, the one the pioneers wrote about during the Great Blizzard of January 12th, 1888. The fuel, the state historical societies quietly documented and almost everyone forgot. It works in the house you already own. You do not need to build anything new. So stay with me, because the order matters. Each of these 9 fuels does a different job, and the last one is the one that changes everything. Let's start with the fuel you think you understand. Firewood. You already knew wood was on this list, so here is the part you didn't know. Most people burning wood this winter are throwing away nearly half their heat, and they have no idea it's happening. The wood looks fine, it's split, it's stacked, it burns. But it's stealing from them every single night. Here is what the Amish understand that your neighbor does not. Wood is not the fuel. Dry wood is the fuel. Water is the enemy. When a tree comes down, that wood can be 45 to 60% water by weight. You cannot see it, but it's in there, locked inside the grain. And when you throw a wet split into your stove, the fire has to boil that water off before it can give you any real heat. Every drop of moisture that hisses out of the end of a log is heat that went up the chimney instead of into your living room. The University of Tennessee's Forestry Extension put hard numbers on this. Properly seasoned firewood needs to be below 20% moisture content before you burn it. Below 20%, green wood, freshly cut, can be triple that. Burn wood at 50% moisture, and you are running a machine that spends the first half of its energy just drying its own fuel. That's why the fire smokes. That's why the glass goes black. That's why your neighbor complains that wood heat is dirty and weak. It isn't. His wood is wet. Let me put that in a picture you'll never forget. Imagine a pot of water sitting on top of every log before it can make heat. That pot has to boil dry first. That's what wet wood does. Half your fire is wasted, evaporating water you can't even see, and that steam carries your heat right out the flue. It also cools the firebox, and a cool fire is a dirty fire. That's where creosote comes from, that black, sticky, tar-like buildup that coats the inside of a chimney and starts flue fires. Wet wood doesn't just rob your heat. It builds the very thing that can burn your house down. Dry wood, burning hot and complete, leaves almost nothing behind. The Amish chimneys I saw were clean, and now you understand why. And there's a difference in the wood itself, not just the dryness. Not all wood is equal, and the Amish know their species cold. A dense hardwood like oak, hickory, ash, or hard maple carries far more heat per stack than a soft, airy wood like pine or poplar. Oak and hickory pack in the neighborhood of 24 to 28 million BTU in a single cord when they're properly seasoned. A soft wood might give you barely half of that from the same size stack. So the Amish cut and save the heavy hardwoods for the deep cold of January and February, and they burn the lighter, faster woods in the shoulder months of fall when they just need to take the chill off. They are matching the fuel to the job, and that's a level of thought most of us were never taught to bring to a woodpile. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. The denser the hardwood, the longer it takes to season. Oak is famous for it. Cut a piece of green oak and it can take a full 2 years, sometimes closer to 3, to drop below that 20% line. Softer woods can be ready in a single summer. This is precisely why the cut-ahead rhythm exists, and it's not laziness or tradition for its own sake. It's chemistry. The Amish learned through generations of hard winters that you cannot rush water out of oak, so they built their whole schedule around it. Now, Here is the Amish rhythm, and it's the whole secret. They are not burning this year's wood. They are burning wood they cut last year or the year before. Walk behind an Amish barn and you'll see wood stacked in long rows, bark side up, ends open to the wind, sitting in the sun for a full summer or two. They cut ahead. They always cut ahead. The wood they split this spring is not for this winter, it's for the winter after. That single habit, cutting 1 year ahead, is worth more than any expensive stove you could buy. And this is where your $10 comes in. Because you don't even need to own a wood lot. That cheap little moisture meter at the hardware counter, the one that costs under $10, is the exact tool that tells you whether the wood you already have is ready or whether you're about to burn money. Stick the 2 prongs into a fresh split face. If it reads over 20, that wood sits another season. Under 20, you're good. For $10, you stop guessing. But dry wood only matters if you can get it lit fast and hot without a fire starter dependency, and this is where the Amish woodshed starts to get interesting. Because the second fuel on this list isn't something they buy, it's something the pine trees hand them for free. The second fuel is fatwood, and once you understand it, you will never look at a pine stump the same way again. When a pine tree is cut or wounded, the tree floods the injury with resin. That sap-soaked wood, usually down in the stump and the root base, becomes saturated with pitch and hardens over the years into something almost like a candle made of wood. That's fatwood. It is loaded with terpenes and resin, and it lights with a single match and burns hot even when it's damp, even after rain, even when everything else in the woods is soaked. The Amish know exactly which old stumps hold it, and they harvest it by the basket. But here is the thing for you, because you might not have a pine forest out back. Walmart sells fatwood by the box for a few dollars. A $10 box of resin sticks will start every fire you build for an entire winter. One split stick, shaved into a few slivers, and your seasoned wood catches in seconds. No lighter fluid, no paper wasted, no chemical starter cubes that cost more than the wood itself. And the reason it works when nothing else will is worth understanding, because it tells you something about all natural fuels. That resin, that pitch, is the tree's own concentrated energy, sealed up and waterproof. Rain rolls right off it. That's why an old-timer could walk into a soaking wet forest after 3 days of storms and still put a fire together, because he knew that inside a rotted pine stump, protected from the weather, sat a knot of fatwood as dry and ready as the day the tree died. Everything else in that forest failed him. The fatwood never did. That is exactly the kind of knowledge that keeps a family alive, and it's exactly the kind of knowledge that got buried under a century of convenience. This is the pattern you're going to see over and over. The Amish don't buy a solution when nature already made one, and the reason this knowledge slipped away from the rest of us is simple. Nobody makes money teaching you to gather resin from a stump. There's no subscription in a pine knot. For generations, the people who preserved this were the people the modern world stopped paying attention to, and that turned out to be exactly the wrong people to ignore. Still, fatwood is a starter, not a stockpile. And the third fuel is the one that turns a handful of pennies into a fire you can start blindfolded in a snowstorm, which brings us to something you probably already have under your bathroom sink. The third fuel is the humblest thing on this entire list, and it might be the one that saves you on the worst night of the year. Cotton and petroleum jelly. A bag of cotton balls costs about $1. A tub of petroleum jelly costs a couple dollars more. For under $5 total, you can make 100 fire starters that each burn long enough and hot enough to light damp wood when your hands are shaking from the cold. Here's how it works and why it works. You take a cotton ball and you work petroleum jelly deep into the fibers until it's saturated. The cotton is the wick, the petroleum jelly is the fuel. Pull that ball open a little so the fibers fluff out, touch a spark to it, and it catches instantly and burns steady for several minutes. That's not a flash. That's minutes of open flame, long enough to dry and ignite kindling that a plain match would never touch. Store them in a plastic bag or an old pill bottle and they last for years. Now, why does an Amish family or anybody serious about staying warm keep a jar of these on the shelf? Because heat is not just about having fuel, it's about being able to start heat fast, every time, in any weather, without depending on a truck delivering a can of something. The whole philosophy here is independence from the moment of failure. The night the power's out and the wind is howling is not the night you want to discover your fancy lighter is empty. A cotton ball and a smear of jelly will never let you down, and it cost you a nickel. Now, if you've been keeping count, we've covered the wood, the natural starter, and the emergency starter. That's the ignition system of the whole shed. But an Amish home doesn't just heat the house, it has to make a low, steady, controllable heat for cooking and for the long overnight hours, and that need points us straight to the fourth fuel, one that has been sealing and burning in these homes for over a century. The fourth fuel is wax. Plain paraffin wax, the same canning wax your grandmother used to seal jelly jars, sold in a 1-pound box at Walmart for just a few dollars. And most people walk right past it, never realizing they're looking at one of the most concentrated, storable, dead cheap fuels on the shelf. And why wax, of all things? Because pound for pound, wax carries more stored energy than the wood itself. It's a hydrocarbon, close cousin to the fuel in a candle that burns for hours off a scrap of wick. That's the trick the Amish exploit. The wax is the long, slow, dependable fuel, and the sawdust, or the paper, is the wick that carries the flame through it. One feeds the other. A wax-soaked sawdust brick doesn't flare up and die like paper. It burns down slow and even, the wax melting and wicking up through the sawdust the whole time, giving you 15 or 20 minutes of real flame from something that cost you pennies and would otherwise have been swept into the trash. Wax is almost pure stored energy. It doesn't spoil, it doesn't evaporate. It sits in a box for 30 years and it's exactly as ready to burn on the last day as the first. The Amish use it a dozen ways, but here's the one that matters for heat. You take sawdust, which any woodworker or sawmill will give you by the bucket for free. You pack it into a paper cup or a cardboard egg carton, and you pour melted paraffin over it. When it hardens, you've made a fuel brick. Each one burns like a little log, slow and hot, for 15 or 20 minutes. A single box of wax and a bag of free sawdust makes a winter's worth of them. And this is the exact moment I need to stop and tell you something, because what you've just learned about wax and sawdust is one small room in a very large house. Everything I'm walking you through today came out of a much bigger collection I've been putting together called the Complete Amish Home System. It's the whole buried archive, room by room, the heating, the cooling that works with no electricity, the pantry that keeps food for a year without a freezer, the pest control, the off-grid water. There's a special limited time offer on it right now. It's linked in the description, and you can scan the QR code on your screen. I put it together for exactly one reason. This knowledge was taken from us quietly, and I think it's time we took it back. Now let me get you to the fifth fuel, because it's the one that keeps the lights on when everyone else is sitting in the dark. The fifth fuel is lamp oil, and it does a job that wood and wax simply cannot. It makes light and gentle, portable heat hour after hour from a source you can hold in one hand. Walk into an Amish home after dark, and it glows. Not from a bulb, from the warm, steady flame of an oil lamp, and the fuel in that lamp is one of the cheapest sources of usable energy you can buy. A bottle of lamp oil or a quart of clean-burning kerosene runs you well under $10, and a good oil lamp will sip that fuel for 40, 50, even 60 hours on a single filling. Think about that ratio, pennies per hour for light you can carry from room to room that never needs a battery, never needs a grid, never goes out because a line went down 3 counties away. And a lamp doesn't just give light. Sit near one and you'll feel it. That flame throws real, if modest, heat, enough to take the bite off a small room, enough to keep a chill from settling into your bones while you read or sew or wait out a storm. And there's a technique here that most people miss entirely. It's not just about pouring in oil and lighting a wick. The Amish trim their wicks carefully and keep the chimney glass spotless because a clean chimney and a properly trimmed wick can nearly double the light you get from the very same drop of fuel. A ragged wick smokes, blackens the glass, and wastes oil. A clean, even wick burns bright and sips slowly. That's the difference between a lamp that eats a bottle a week and one that runs for over a month on the same bottle. Small habits, enormous savings. This is the thread that runs through everything the Amish do. They don't spend more, they waste less. And let me be plain about the safety of it, because I know somebody's thinking it. Any open flame needs air, and a room that burns oil or any fuel needs a crack of ventilation and a working carbon monoxide detector, which is itself a $10 item worth more than its weight in gold. The Amish live with fire every day of their lives, and they treat it with respect, not fear. Respect means you understand it. Fear means you hand it to a company and forget how it works. This whole video is about trading fear for respect. The Amish have leaned on this for generations, not because they're stuck in the past, but because they made a choice. They looked at a system where your ability to see after sundown depends on a company 200 miles away, and they said, no thank you. We'll keep the fuel in the cellar. And that decision, made over and over across a whole community, is why an ice storm that shuts down an entire county is, in an Amish house, just an evening like any other. But light and small heat is not the same as heating a whole house through January, and this is the point where a lot of people give up on self-sufficiency because they think real heat has to come from a cord of wood or nothing. They're wrong. And the 6 fuel proves it because it comes compressed into a little bag that a 70-year-old can carry with one hand. The 6th fuel is the pellet, and it solves the single biggest problem with wood heat, which is the sheer back-breaking labor of it, splitting, hauling, stacking, seasoning for 2 years. Not everybody can do that anymore. Maybe your back's gone, maybe you don't have the land. A 40-pound bag of wood pellets, sold at Walmart and countless farm stores, often runs right around that $10 mark, sometimes less, and it is nothing but wood compressed under enormous pressure into dense little cylinders with almost no moisture left in them at all. Think about the labor that vanishes here, because for a lot of us, that's the real barrier, not the money. To heat a home with cordwood, a man has to fell trees, buck them into rounds, split every round by hand or by maul, stack it all, wait 2 years, then carry it in armload by armload all winter long. That's honest work, and I love it, but it's the work of a younger back than a lot of us are carrying now. A bag of pellets skips every single step of that. The tree was cut, dried, ground, and pressed in a mill, and all that labor is already baked into the little cylinder. You buy the finished work of a whole sawmill for around $10 a bag. For an older man or woman living alone, that's not a convenience. That's the difference between staying independent and giving up. Remember what I told you about water being the enemy? Pellets are the answer taken to its extreme. They're dried down to around 5 or 10% moisture, far drier than even the best seasoned firewood, which is exactly why they burn so hot and so clean. One bag stacks in a corner, 40 of them stack on a single pallet in your garage and heat a home for a month. No woodlot, no chainsaw, no 2-year wait. Just clean, dense, stored heat you can buy on a Tuesday and burn on a Wednesday. Now I know what the purists say. Pellets need a special stove, and some of them need electricity to run the auger. That's true for the fancy models, but it misses the point, and the point is this. The Amish approach was never about one perfect fuel. It was about having many fuels, so that no single failure ever leaves you cold. Wood when you have time and muscle, pellets when you don't. Wax and cotton when the weather turns cruel. Layers, redundancy. That is the entire philosophy, and it's the opposite of how the rest of us were taught to live, which is to run one system from one company and pray it never breaks. Now, if you already own a house and you're thinking this only applies to people building something new out in the country, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. If your home was built before 1980, and millions of them were, you are actually holding an advantage that new construction can't buy. And almost nobody tells you this. Those older homes very often still have a real chimney, a real flue, sometimes a bricked up fireplace, or at minimum a masonry chimney that once vented a coal or oil furnace. That is an asset. That is a ready-made path for a wood stove or a pellet stove to vent safely, and it's already in your walls, paid for, waiting. Here is the 7th fuel, and it's the one built for exactly that older house, because it needs no woodlot and almost no equipment. Compressed fuel bricks. Sometimes they're sold as sawdust bricks, sometimes as fire logs, sometimes as heat blocks, and a bundle at Walmart lands well under $10. They're made from nothing but compressed sawdust and wood waste, squeezed so hard the material fuses without any glue at all. Bone dry, rock hard. They store on a shelf like bricks, they don't attract bugs the way loose firewood does, and they burn long and even. And think about where they come from. Every sawmill, every furniture shop, every lumber yard in America produces mountains of sawdust and wood shavings as waste, material that used to be burned off or hauled to a landfill. Somebody figured out you could take that waste, dry it, and squeeze it under thousands of pounds of pressure until the wood's own natural lignin melts just enough to glue it back together into a solid brick. No chemicals, no wax, just wood, minus the water, packed tighter than nature ever packed it. That's why a bundle of these can throw more consistent heat than the same weight of split logs. You're burning wood that's been perfected. For the man or woman in the older home who cannot deal with cords of firewood, this is the answer. You can stack a month of heat in the space of a closet. You can carry a day's fuel in one trip. And because they're so dry and so dense, they put out serious, steady heat in any wood or multi-fuel stove. The Amish didn't invent the compressed brick, but they understood its principle a century before the factories did. Take waste, remove the water, compress the energy, store it dry. That's every fuel on this list in one sentence. And here's where I have to tell you why so few people know any of this, because you deserve the truth about it. For most of the last century, there was real money in making sure you depended on exactly one pipe coming into your house and 1 meter on the side of it. A family that heats with wood and wax and pellets and oil is a family that doesn't need that pipe. They're a customer who walked away. Somebody noticed that a long time ago. Somebody benefited, year after year, from you believing that heat has to come from a utility and a monthly bill. But belief is a funny thing. It only holds until somebody shows you the woodshed. And once you've seen how an Amish family actually stays warm, you can't unsee it. Which brings us to the 8th fuel, the one that sounds too simple to work until you run the numbers. The 8th fuel is dried corn, not corn on the cob for dinner. Shelled field corn, the hard dry kernels, the same stuff sold as deer feed and livestock feed in 50-pound bags at Walmart and every farm store in America, very often for well under $10 a bag. And I know exactly how that sounds. Burning food, burning corn to stay warm. It sounds absurd until you look at what the agricultural scientists measured, and then it stops being absurd and starts being brilliant. The extension researchers put real numbers on shelled corn as a fuel. Dried down to about 15% moisture, corn carries a heat value of roughly 7,000 BTU per pound, which works out to around 300,000 BTU in a single bushel. Let me translate that into something you can feel. That 1 bushel of corn at those efficiencies delivers heat equivalent to nearly 3 gallons of fuel oil or about 4.5 gallons of propane. Sit with that. A bushel of shelled corn, which a farmer can grow for a few dollars, does the work of 4.5 gallons of the propane they truck to your tank at a premium. Let me slow down on that comparison, because it's the whole reason this fuel exists. Propane and fuel oil are priced by the market, by the pipeline, by the truck, by companies whose entire business is that you have no other option when the temperature drops. Corn is priced by the soil and the rain. In a good harvest year, the price of a bushel of corn can fall so low that farmers actually lose money selling it. And in those years, burning it for heat isn't wasteful. It's the most sensible thing a farmer can do with a crop the market won't pay for. He's turning a loss into warmth. That's not desperation. That's the oldest kind of common sense there is, the kind that built this country before anyone thought to meter it. And it burns cleaner than you'd guess. Dry corn, at that 15% moisture, ignites completely and leaves a hard little clinker of ash that's easy to clear. It doesn't need seasoning like wood. It comes off the field already close to ready, and a few weeks in a dry crib finishes it. It stores in a barrel or a bin, safe from nothing but water and mice, and a couple of galvanized trash cans with tight lids will hold enough shelled corn to carry a small home through the worst weeks of the year, 50 pounds at a time, right off the shelf, for less than the cost of a pizza. The Amish and their farming neighbors have burned corn in corn stoves for decades, and the logic is airtight. In a good year, corn is so cheap that a farmer sitting on a full crib is quite literally sitting on a warmer, cheaper fuel than anything the energy company will sell him. It flows like water, it feeds into a stove automatically, and it burns hot and steady. The reason you never heard about it is the same reason you never heard about the rest of this list. There's no profit, for the people who usually advertise to you in telling you that a bag of feed corn can heat your kitchen. But corn kernels, as clever as they are not the secret I promised you at the very beginning, because the ninth fuel is older than the corn stove, older than Walmart, older than the propane truck. It's the fuel the settlers reached for when the blizzard hit, and there was nothing else, and it's been hiding in plain sight in the historical record for 130 years. Stay with me, because this is the one. The ninth fuel is the corn cob, the part everybody throws away, the part that gets ground up or plowed under or hauled off as trash. And to understand why it's the crown of this whole list, you have to go back to the plains in the winter of 1888. On January 12th, 1888, a blizzard swept down across the Dakotas and Nebraska so fast and so violent that it caught school children in one-room schoolhouses on their way home. History remembers it as the school children's blizzard, and when you read the memoirs, The Survivors Left Behind, collected later by state historical societies, the same detail appears again and again. Out on the treeless plains, where there was no forest for 100 miles, the families who survived kept their stoves burning with corn cobs. The Nebraska State Historical Society documented it plainly. Where there was no wood, settlers burned what the prairie and the harvest gave them, and dried corn cobs were among the hottest, fastest fuels they had. This wasn't a desperate last resort, it was a system. Agricultural historians will tell you that corn cobs were once considered an important fuel across early America, used to heat houses, barns, and small businesses long before anyone thought of them as waste. A dried cob is full of dense, fibrous material with almost no water in it once it's cured. It catches fast, like fatwood, it burns hot, like a hardwood split. And it produces a bed of coals that holds heat for a good long while. The pioneers on the plains and the Amish who kept the old ways alive understood something we forgot. The waste product of your food crop is a premium fuel that costs you absolutely nothing. And here is why this is the one that changes everything for you in the house you already own this weekend with no permit and no contractor. If you can get corn on the cob, and you can, a bag of dried decorative or feed cobs costs just a few dollars at that same Walmart, or you can save and dry the cobs from your own kitchen and garden all summer for free. You spread them somewhere dry for a few weeks until they're bone hard and rattling, and then, mixed in with your wood, a few dried cobs will light a cold stove faster than newspaper and burn hotter than you would ever believe something free could burn. That's the buried knowledge, not a machine, not a subscription, not a device with your name on a monthly bill. Just the memory of what a farm family did in 1888 to keep their children alive through the worst night the plains had ever seen, preserved by the historians who wrote it down, kept alive by the Amish who never stopped doing it, and handed now to you. The knowledge existed, it was pushed aside because there was no money in it for anyone but you. One community kept it burning, and now you have it back. So let me lay the whole woodshed out in front of you one last time, because now you can see it the way the Amish do. Seasoned wood kept a year ahead. Fatwood to start it. Cotton and jelly for the cruelest nights. Paraffin wax and sawdust bricks for the low, steady hours. Lamp oil for light and gentle warmth. Pellets for the days your back can't split a log. Compressed bricks for the older house with a good chimney, dried corn that outheats propane, and corn cobs, the free crown of it all, straight out of 1888, 9 fuels, every one of them under $10, not one of them requiring you to ask permission from anybody. What you just got back is not really a list of fuels, it's something they took from all of us slowly, one convenience at a time, until we forgot we ever knew how to keep ourselves warm. You just got it back. And if you're the kind of person who believes that real, practical knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect somebody else's monthly bill, then you already know what to do next. I want to hear from you, specifically. Of these 9, which one surprised you the most? Was it the feed corn that outheats propane, or was it the corn cobs from the blizzard of 1888? Tell me in the comments right now, in one word if that's all you've got, because I read them and I answer them, and this community is built by the people who speak up. Don't just watch and leave. Leave a comment, and if you want the rest of it, subscribe and stand with the people who are recovering this lost knowledge before it disappears for good. This was Heat. Next time, I'm going to show you how the same families keep an entire cellar of food from spoiling through the whole summer with no refrigerator and no electricity. Using one mineral you can buy in a bag for a few dollars, you won't want to miss which one, because once you see it, you'll never trust a refrigerator the same way again. So here's what I want you to do before the cold sets in. Pick just one of these 9 and put it in your home this week. 1 box of Fatwood, 1 bag of pellets, 1 jar of cotton and jelly on the shelf. Start with 1, and you'll feel something shift. A little less dependent, a little more your own. That feeling is what they took from us, and it's yours to take back. Stay warm. And start cutting a year ahead